Hello, hello.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. I will give just some minutes for other people that are trying to enter to join us as well. Meanwhile, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. My name is Joana. I've been the leader of Interaction Design Foundation from Lisbon. And since we entered in COVID, I thought that it would be nice that we pass these talks for a completely digital environment so we could still meet and hear nice people like Gonçalo today and trade some thoughts. So thank you all for joining. Today, as I said, we will have Gonçalo to do the winter talk for us. These winter talks are in partnership with the Edit Disruptive Digital School, which has headquarters in Lisbon and Porto. If you don't know them, check them out. And also with OutSystems, which is a low-code platform. And Gonçalo is actually the head of R&D user experience. I will maybe pass the word to him, but before that, I would just like to tell you that his talk will be around 1 hour. You can pose any questions you want in chat, and I'm sure that Gonçalo will be replying to you. But in the end, we will have about 15 to 30 minutes of QA session that you can actually speak and make your questions directly to him. So thank you all again for joining. Gonçalo, with no further ado, I pass the word to you so you can introduce yourself, which I think you will do a better job than me.
Okay. Well, thank you, Joanna, and thank you for the invitation from IDF to do this talk. Sometimes it's a great excuse to put some content together and have the chance to review your story, which was shared with a lot of people. Some of them are in this presentation as well. So shall I start, Joanna, or for now it's just introductions?
I think maybe we can give 2 more minutes, but
Yeah, makes sense, right?
we can start. And thank you for joining. It's a pleasure for Interaction Designer to have you as a speaker.
Happy to be here. Okay, so we'll just keep at introductions for now. So my name is Gonçalo Veiga. I've been at OutSystems for many years. I've done a lot of things here. I actually reinvented myself and rediscovered myself as I came into OutSystems, because for a long time I used to be a backend engineer, and I figured I was always a very creative person and a visual person, and actually found out that I just loved user experience. And so I had a whole reinvention of myself while at OutSystems. And for the last 10 years, I've been creating teams around user experiences, both in services and product. And it's been an amazing ride. And that's part of what I want to share here today with you. So you have my link there. Feel free to connect, and I'd love to learn more about you. And that's it for an introduction. Any initial questions from anyone?
Guys, feel free to write in the chat and also to introduce yourselves. I think everybody's still a bit shy, Gonçalo. So if you want to...
Yeah. So I have bad news. I have bad news, guys. So I have a bit of content. Okay, I'm sorry. So I didn't have time to make it shorter. So there is a bit of content, but there's a lot of stuff, good stuff to share. And through the talk, so I'd actually invite you to put questions, and or we'll go through the chat at specific points, so we can make this a lot more interactive and more interesting. Does that sound good? Yes.
Yes, it does.
Amazing. Yes, they're alive. So we have Portugal, US. Figueira da Foz, just to the side of Portugal. and Vila Facaia. So I hope you guys are doing good and safe. It's been tough here in Portugal. The virus has clearly dropped hard on our heads. So hope you're keeping safe. Yeah, Brazil in the house again also. Olá, Marta. I can tell a story. So when I started to get into UX and I was still at services at OutSystems, so I actually started by being more of the UI guy, like building CSS and JavaScript. And UI guy basically meant that I was the guy that was called whenever the UI of some project was burning up. It just looked like crap. So I just, at some point, I got tired of just fixing the UIs. And I pitched to do a training on CSS and sorts to the services area. And someone suggested that I should put some things around UX, and I'd been reading something but wasn't really an expert. So I included just a bit of user experience at the end of that training. And I was fortunate or unfortunate enough to actually have a salesperson in the room. And before I knew it, there were UX services being sold. And suddenly I was a UXer. And that was actually my start as a UX professional. So there was a lot of reading in coffee shops before going up to meet customers to make sure that I could say anything intelligent. But it was also a great school to actually get into user experience. I read a lot of amazing books, which did a lot of the heavy lifting at the time. So yeah, careful about salespeople, but they can also be your friends. Yeah, thank you for the feedback, Larry. Yeah, it's funny how things work out, right? It was a lot of fun putting this thing together. Like just going through these 5 years, which in OutSystems years, it's like 50, I think. There's so many things, and I'm sorry that I actually made it a bit too long, so I hope that doesn't get in the way. But I just had so many amazing things to share. And it was really a pleasure to put this together. Okay, Joanna, should I get more stories or?
I think you can go, Gonçalo, and
Yeah.
tell the whole story.
Okay, so let's go over the whole story. Okay, so the talk is all about how we grew UX specifically in the product area at OutSystems. We've come a long way, and we started off not with the right foot, and that's part of where I'll be starting and how we recovered from that. And actually, we've made, I think, amazing progress until today. And there were a lot of stages and lessons learned throughout all this path, and that's exactly what I mean to share with you guys so that you can adapt to your own reality and see what works. So I've been through this. So maybe the first message is that everyone wants to be Apple, right? So there's always that conversation with like a senior level that says we need to be like Apple. But when it comes down then to budgets and priorities and the focus of the senior management in the company, things always fall a bit short. Suddenly the things don't go exactly how you'd expect them to go. So there's a lot of twists and turns, and some things work better than others. And a lot of times it's just a lot of guerrilla and skunk works. And that's a bit of where we went through. So in this presentation, I hope to make it as cozy as possible, and I invite your interactions again. It makes it a lot more fun. Um, and in this presentation, I'll be going broad in a lot of topics. So I won't go in depth into a lot of stuff. Um, and it's basically these are the things that in some ways work for us, which we already also have a very particular profile or a very particular context, but a lot of stuff will be applicable to you, and maybe different things will be applicable to different people. Exactly. um, and like I was saying, you probably know this from some of social the network that that you commonly go to, and it's so true. So the story I'm going to tell you, it seems like really linear and everything was really done by the book. It's a lie. Don't believe it. It's actually a very messy process, and actually there's some science to the mess. And actually, I'm going to share some of those lessons with you guys to actually figure out when there's a turn that you can use to actually forward your agenda and your mission to make UX more important, more relevant in the company. Okay, and it all started many years ago, as I've shared, when I entered the company. So we're a product that aims at developing applications. So we have a developer experience. And so there was always kind of a tradition experience-wise. And actually, in the first day I started in the company, there was this person, which is still in the company and in the UX group, Tiago, which actually sat the whole day behind me, just watching me use the product. Okay, he was actually the first UXer I ever met. Amazingly interesting person. Um, and um, so we do have a tradition when it comes to our product in terms of UX. And we do have like a product which is aims to be rather intuitive and easy to use, very visual. This is OutSystems 5. We're actually at OutSystems 11. You'll see a snap of it later in the presentation. And the problem with the reason why this didn't start like 20 years ago, all this UX dynamics, is that there were actually like 3 or 4 people that actually knew how to work our product, how to create that developer experience. So what happened was that when we started scaling and growing a bit more, suddenly those people were not available anymore, and suddenly things weren't working out as we would like. So and that kind of marks like year zero of this story. Um, so we're in a highly engineering driven context. So it's like a product for developers, okay? And there's only a few people to go around and really support the design of the experience of the product. So as we started trying to hire more designers, we failed a lot. So for a long time, um, the designers that we hired, although they were very had the best intentions at heart and the organization had the best intentions for them, they actually weren't able to get the confidence within the teams, and they were quickly relegated to just icon designers. Okay, and that basically demotivate or just kill their motivation. And eventually, we would lose them. So we had huge designer turnover for a long time, also because our domain is rather complex, so it was hard to get to. And it kind of was like they would pick up a designer, putting them in a team, it didn't really work out, and then move to another team, and eventually we would lose that designer. And this was a status that we were for a long time. So what did we do like 5 years around, more or less, to actually solve this problem? So this is part of where the story will start, and this is basically what we're trying to achieve. So we would like to get to become like the first source in product in some way, and this was the challenge that was presented to me and other people like 5 years ago. And what does that third force mean? So usually, and for a long time, this was more or less the setting. You have product management, you have the development group, and UX kind of appeared here. In some other companies, we know that it actually comes from marketing or actually in product management. This is our case. And when we're talking about third force, is actually that we have the same grounding as product management development to do a lot of those product decisions. So if we were to describe exactly what that third force would be, it would be something like that we have a say in the prioritization of product initiatives, okay? So that we would bring the user needs into the table and that they would play a role. Basically, that we would be able to actually push UX initiatives into the roadmap and make sure that some things, just for the interest of users, were getting some light of day. So that we'd actually have a power to block releases of product that actually made the user experience worse, so jeopardized the 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 or the well-being of our users in some way, so that we can actually have the empowerment to change processes in product also as we see fit. And at the end, that it's a respected practice that's recognized and understood by the other parties. So this is kind of like what I mean as the third force that's in the title of this presentation. And this was kind of like what we were aiming at like a few years back, not maybe in so many words, but this was kind of like what we felt that was really required. But we didn't really start there, right? So this model is going to run with us through the presentation, and it's going to show us a bit of what was the path to become more strategic. And at the beginning, we were actually paradoxically at the end. So we were basically at the end of the cycle, just doing UI design and just applying visual assets, which didn't really work out for an amazing experience. But that was the place where we started. Okay, so year one. So we're starting. We put together a new team, a small team for a lot of products. So at this stage, we had like 10 to 15 years of legacy product. So we're a really complex technical domain, and not really much credit to go around regarding user experience. So the first thing I'll say is some false starts that we had of places that probably you don't want to start with. So the first one is to start working in elaborate personas. Doesn't mean there's no value to product personas, so because we actually created them a few years later, but it's just the wrong place to start. Okay, it's the kind of thing that UX does, which is not completely aligned with the exact needs at that point of the team. Will need to be a lot more pragmatic. So the other mistake sometimes is that we go out and start doing like extensive research. And one of the problems here is that if you're not really in the team and you don't have that context, it's easy for you to do research that doesn't really matter. And sometimes because we don't have the focus and not really understand the complete problem, it's such a challenge that you end up creating a lot of stuff, and the good stuff actually falls in between the cracks and doesn't get noticed. So we actually had some cases where we produced good research and there were good insights, but there was so much of it that they were actually ignored due to the noise. And another thing that we don't want to do is kind of the ivory tower design. So you actually go out and spend a few weeks and create this amazing design, but there's no idea of what's feasible or not. And sometimes just misses the point in here and there, and suddenly all the credibility was lost. So, so where should you start? And here I'll introduce a concept in the presentation. Probably some of you recognize this. Does anyone recognize this, even in a very, very remote language? I'm looking at the chat. Yeah, Magic the Gathering. So I'm going to show you and share with you a set of battle cards, okay, that you can use as you're trying to bootstrap your practice, okay? So what should we do? So the first battle card is, as you set up the team, don't spread yourself too thin, okay? Just focus on a few projects so that you're able to get the most understanding possible, okay? That you're actually able to bring more than one UXer into the problem, and that you're able to create really impactful solutions, Okay. The second battle card is to be extremely pragmatic. Okay. Don't overdo it at the beginning. People won't understand exactly what you're doing. So even if you don't have much time, or even if you have a lot of a great place to start is just usability tests. Is at least it's so powerful when you actually get then the time of the team and actually show what's happening with the product you're developing. It produces such amazing results, and it's such a great investment, and return. Figure out exactly what works. So no, like amazing, like huge researches and designs, really focus on pragmatism. And the last one, which is really important, is to be highly collaborative. So no ivory tower designs. Don't go out and do whatever UX does. Just stay there with the team and collaborate actively with them, and just iterate in an egoless fashion, if that exists, to just improve on those designs. Okay, just get down and dirty with the team. So the second recommendation here would be how to look at the mature product. So as I've told you, we had like 10 to 15 years of product. So there's a lot to go around. So you have a lot of product, there's a lot of things going on, and there's also the future of the product that UX plays an obvious role. But my recommendation here is that you don't go ahead because you still don't have enough credit to actually get that vision maybe right, or to actually get the credit and the traction in your organization. This might change from place to place, but in our case, this was clearly the situation. And you still don't have enough influence in the team to actually convince them there's a lot of stuff to fix from the past, and actually change their agenda to go there instead of just working whatever's happening there. So and now I'd like to share a story. So I talked about that you should focus on just a few projects and be highly collaborative with those teams. So one of the reasons why that's so important, no, that's actually the next slide. So the merge story was about an initiative that started off without product design, and we only caught it a bit later, already implemented into the product. So this was a merge feature that was supposed to merge code between developers. And the first time we did some usability tests, what happened was that everyone lost code in the merge process. Okay, so we had a merge feature which was supposed to make sure that they didn't have the hassle to just connect stuff. And at the end, basically everyone that tried to use the product just lost the code. And we took a few iterations in product to get it right. And the reason why that's such an amazing story is because it creates clearly an obvious situation where the role of design becomes important. So basically, it's something that didn't start off with UX, and then suddenly, as we got there, because we're having problems, it became very clear, like night and day, why we should have been there. There was another story at the time, which was app feedback, which was just spread through the team. So UX was not there. It was spread through all the product teams, and each team had a piece of the app feedback to develop. At the end, there was no centralized UX vision. So what happened was, or no aggregated UX vision. So what happened was that each piece of the puzzle didn't really connect to the whole. So these kind of stories, and the reason why they're so important is they make it very obvious where UX is and where UX isn't. Okay, so one of the reasons I told you that we should focus on less, it's because it actually makes a huge difference then about the places where we are and the places where we're not. And if we would stretch ourselves too thin, we wouldn't be doing enough of a job to actually get the credit, okay? And you wouldn't really have the difference between the initiatives to actually make your case. So there's two points to that, and one of the insights, one of the first ones, is the power of having these stories. So these stories are your best friends. So whenever you get into an argument that, okay, maybe we don't need design there, or we don't need to do this activity, just having 2 or 3 stories which are completely relevant to that product that happened to the same team or the team besides that. Just throwing out those 2 or 3 stories of something that happened there, okay, and what it took to actually fix that and get to something that worked can make a world of difference as of getting your point across. So this is something that Jared's pool, which is like a big reference for us, also puts forward, is that these stories can be intensely powerful for you to push UX forward. So it was exactly through this strategy of focusing on less and creating on contrasts that we were able to navigate and become slightly more strategic. So we stopped doing so much UI design and we actually got more and more work leading more of the solution design process, which is, as you know, absolutely indispensable. Yeah, Jared really likes this. It's a recurring topic for him. This is the kind of, so focusing on less and creating these contrasts was exactly what we needed to make the case that UX was really required. Okay, so this created by the end of the first year some street cred. So we didn't have really a lot of credit, and suddenly we have some street cred, and people were looking out to us that we should have more of this UX thing in more places. Okay. So at this point, I stop. Do you have any questions at this stage? Nope. Well, that was direct. Going on 1, going on 2. Okay, moving forward. Okay, so we entered year 2. So the top challenges going into the year 2 is, so we're paying the price for being successful. So we have a growing number of requests for our very little team. So as you'll see, we'll try to grow the team, but there's a lot of newbies there. And we have this amazing challenge, which is, okay, how do we cover everything that's going on in the product? Not even looking at the legacy or where we're going and stuff like that. So we kind of figured and put something together, which was, okay, how could we artificially create more capacity in the team? And basically what we did was we went to development teams and we kind of probed like the UX enthusiasts, the people which were more inclined to do stuff like what we do. And we set out, like we launched a whole program and a new role.
Eu às vezes vinha da estação até ao trabalho.
Okay. Okay, so we launched this program, which was the experience owners, and we launched them to a set of people throughout the engineering group, and we really invested in them, okay, and tried to make them like honorary members of our team, try to extend us. And the master plan was something like this. So we wanted to become more strategic, but for now we could just like be just answering whatever request that we came by, and we were trying to get a bit more maturity on how we handle those. So the idea was to actually get a bit more support. So like getting a few developers that are into UX, we would train them a bit at least to do some of the things, and you'd accelerate our path to becoming more and more strategic. Okay, so in that process, we created a lot of cool stuff like designers sometimes do to actually bring them in and make this really interesting. And this worked. So we were a very small team, and suddenly we have a set of different people, which enlarged the team and increased our capacity in a very short term. Okay. So, but suddenly we have these newbies in the team, right? And we're also trying to hire and getting more people. So one of the things that was really, really important was for us to start bootstrapping our knowledge base. So there's a lot of content out there, but there's nothing like really having our act together or figuring out exactly what's the version of the processes that work for us, and really put something together with some go-to persons to actually consolidate that knowledge and make it more accessible and easier for anyone to go into it. Okay, and there's a lot of stuff. which you can get fairly proficient with some ease. So you don't need like a university degree for it. So that's what we found, that a bit of structure and adapted to our own context can go a long way. So we also developed our own version of the process of the design process. There's many versions to it. This from the team from the work that we did within the team became ours, and it became also very cherished. And all this process of putting this stuff together and collaborating, figuring out exactly what worked for us, did a marvel also to create a bit of culture of how we're supposed to be doing this, and sharing this crusade of making UX relevant. Okay, so we started doing also some thought leadership and doing stuff, and for example, playing around with our process and figuring out that we could do a few stickers and share them out with other people. So it was really important to bring some soul into this. So just don't see like this like immense challenge of just putting design everywhere and at least do usability tests, but just have some fun with it. And especially as we want to get attention and relevance and actually interest from other people to actually collaborate with us, it's really important that you become interesting. So battle cards. So what is our recommendation that you should be doing? So one is, as we'll see, a lot of those XOs actually became product designers later. Okay, so we continue to invest on their training, and today they're like amazing designers we have in the group. So the fact that they're still not designers doesn't mean that they can become UXers. It'll mean sometimes that they don't have like a very tuned visual and interaction design skills. There's a set of skills maybe they will never get, but in some other areas they might become real masters on those specific skills regarding user experience. So we should be open to that. So another one is that if you're bringing on new people, okay, you need to help them get that proficiency. So it's important for you to start investing in documentation, figuring out and sharing a pragmatic view on how to do some specific activities regarding UX. And then don't wait for you to like come into or having an enormous culture don't wait for having an enormous group to actually start working on a culture. So we have the ability to do really interesting things, even visually. We tend to be different people. We tend to be very creative. So let's use that, okay? Let's make ourselves interesting. And obviously that share and teach whomever is interested, and just keep sharing the good word. Okay, so another lesson here. So we talked about the importance of stories, right? And another important lesson as you're growing from a small team and you can't really cover all the product is just saying no. So the no, although really hard to use, okay, I myself continue to have troubles in that, and I tend to be too helpful. And I apologize to my team or the people here for it. So it's also it's a really powerful tool. So whenever you say no, you give the ability to your team to create more focus, to bring more eyes and hands eventually to the problem, and actually to produce better quality work that will create more impact. Okay, and that's an amazing positive note. But another one, which sometimes it's even more important, it's that it also creates a bit of pain. Creates pain to the other side that's not getting UX. And a lot of that pain sometimes gets escalated, okay, and becomes an issue. And that's actually a good thing. Sometimes you need to go after it because you really need to do whatever. Sometimes you don't, but it creates this idea that we don't have enough UX and that we need to change stuff and that our processes need to have a lot more design into it. Okay, so as another lesson here is the fact that we're saying no as a set of consequences that help in the development of the practice. Okay, so sometimes it might not be seen the best thing in a short term. It will help you immensely in the long term. Okay, and the fact that we're doing this, so we're getting more people, you're training them, you're creating a culture, you're explaining how things work and how you get to better solutions, it actually enables you to go up the value chain and figure out, okay, so we need this solution, but let's really figure out what's the problem that we're trying to reach. And maybe there's a maybe there's a better solution for this, which is just slightly by the side, if only we understood exactly the context in which we're creating this. So what are the user needs? What are you trying to accomplish? Are they starting off from an Excel, whatever? So it leads to a considerably better solution. Okay, so, and we come to the end of year 2. And at this point, we have some serious money in the bank. Okay, we have some serious credibility, which gives us space to start thinking about other things. Okay, and at this point, as we're ending point 2, do we have any other questions? Oh, we have a question, Katharina. So from a UX perspective, where do you see OutSystems team UX maturity according to Jared Spool's 5 stages? I think it'll become more obvious as we go forward. So I think it's exactly that this chapter will talk about going embedded into the teams. And then there's a continued work on making the whole organization literate on and fluent on UX and design processes. So I think we're pretty close to the end, although I don't want to ruin it for anyone. But we still have work to do for sure. Do you have a dedicated team working on the documentations? Yes, we'll go a bit through the structure. Just hold on a bit. Any other questions? But thank you for the questions, Katarina. Okay, let's move on. Year 3. Okay, so coming into year 3, so a year for growing. So we had put some documentation together, but we really had some weak UX foundations. So what the product should be and what the design, the look and feel should be across the product, who we're building it to, how should we write for the user. So we didn't really have this put together. So we had a few techniques, we have a few processes, but really the product that we should be building and making sure it's like consistent, coherent, etc., etc. It was really hard. We're still very reactive, so it's just we're just trying to figure out how we're going to handle every request that's being thrown at us. And through all this time, it's really hard to get to the users. It takes time. You need to put the logistics together, so it's always challenging. So you end up doing a lot of shortcuts, trying to design for those users. Okay, so and in this chapter, when did UX writing emerge as a discipline? From Larry. Actually, I'm going to talk this at the end of this chapter. So it was around this point that we started looking into UX writing. So we'll go there. So I'm talking about models because it's about how you create some direction for your designers to actually build the same product. So we have something here at OutSystems that we use a lot, which is operating models, which is all these frameworks which are just enough to help other people figure out the product that you should be doing in a fairly autonomous way. Okay, and I'll go into this later. So around this time, there was a change also happening in our product where we're trying to get less of a development team and more of a product team. So we wanted to create these product teams, which were multidisciplinary, which were autonomous, or fairly autonomous. And basically what that meant was that they would own an area of a problem or opportunity, they would figure out what's the best solution, and they own those outcomes, and they would need to press on until those outcomes were reached, which is an amazing model, which we still have today. So basically you define the contract with them, like a mission and a set of metrics to measure success, and then you just let them do their thing. So this is not something that we really pushed, but made like a huge difference to really incorporate UX into everything that we were doing. And we just went along with for the ride and really helped blowing on the sail in this case. So basically, we used to have more a centralized practice, and we became more spread apart. Okay, and this is one of the points where some of the magic happens. Okay, so one, we continue to select specifically the projects where we should be focusing. Okay, so we don't just spread out completely. And another thing is that although we're spreading out, we still need to have a strong core. If we lose that strong core, we're going to go into that initial mode, which is the lonesome designer doing its own thing. Okay, and we don't really get to that level of influence or become that strategic to influence the product. So where do we decide to put our UXers? So we make the rules very transparent and very obvious that we're going to make decisions where we're going to put these UXers. So whatever there's the most impact in experience, the number of personas or users affected, the level of uncertainty in the problem or solution area. So the more uncertain is something that we're doing, like it's the first time that we're going to create a product for that specific persona. So there's a lot more uncertainty, a lot more risk into that. So that's a place where you should be. Actually, depending on the maturity of the UX maturity of the product team, which can actually help us in a lot of activities, we can figure out exactly how we can best balance our allocation depending on that maturity. And again, then there's a whole risk involved around user experience, and sometimes there's so much risk for the damage to the company image that although it might be something specific, it's so critical that we need to be there. But the most important thing is to make sure that these rules are known, that people understand how we're playing this game, and that the know is part of it. Okay. So the other part I talked about was that although we're becoming more spread apart, it's really important that we continue to work together really closely, and that we continue to have this practice. And basically, to really have this practice and have like these shared beliefs and enthusiasm, and a lot of it comes from time together. So one of the things that we negotiated from the start as we went into this model was that 10% of the times were practice time. Okay, so that's equivalent to, like, in a sprint of 2 weeks, that's one day is supposed to be focused on practice and their activities. So, and these activities range from people which are presenting things to the whole group. Okay. So we do have weekly syncs, which are timed and really disciplined, but what's amazing there is that everyone gets to see everything that's happening around the product. So everyone can leave a comment, can reach out. So it really helps us bring a more cohesive experience. So then we have the design reviews, like it's like oxygen for experience. It's amazing for people growth. So that's something that we select each week's designs or product that we need to go through, and we join a set of relevant people in the group to actually go through it at that time. And we also promote a lot of pair working, so to make sure that people are connecting and sharing ideas and learning from each other. So although we went to this shared system, okay, we're getting more questions. I'll get there. So although we went into this system, it was a system that had a few caveats and a few agreements also with it. So we have this new model, which is spread apart, but especially because each person is more and more doing its thing, okay, and we only connect from time to time, it becomes more important to really understand what is this product that we're supposed to be working on. It becomes less obvious sometimes exactly how we should be developing as a practice, of how we increase our impact, how we build and develop on this culture. And the people which are in the teams tend to be completely consumed with whatever is happening there in that team. So, and that's exactly the design of it, right? They have a mission, they have a shared mission, and they're completely focused to do whatever they need to do, leveraging the skills available in the team to make sure that you get there. Okay. So this is the point where you really need to bet on UX foundations. And this is the point where some money in the bank, some extra credit gives you the margin to start working on stuff. So, and this is just kind of a model that helps me kind of look at the vectors in which we should be evolving. So we talked about the need to get closer, for example, to the users. So that's the core of any practice, of any UX practice. So this user centricity, to make sure that the channels are there, that it's easy as possible, that you can just reach out whenever you need to a specific profile or a set of them, and just observe them or interview them or test a solution with them. So this channel is like paramount for the success of our practice. So there's clearly a vector that we need to work there. Another one is that whatever we do needs to have a level of quality regarding the experience. We need to be sure that whatever we're doing is really, we're upping our game and we're building more of the same product with the same values, and that it really works and gets those outcomes, the expected outcomes. So there's a whole vector of trying to get better at training designers, of working with them, at looking at this work and really making sure that whenever we release something, it's something that's OutSystems. Okay. Another thing that we need to do is to always continue to develop the practice. So as we grow, as we start figuring out that we need to up our game, we need to continue to figure out exactly how we develop it, how we make sure that there's this shared understanding of what we're doing. And at the bottom, there's a design culture. And this is about all the organization looks at design, how we become interesting, how everyone's inspired to do better, so that other people everyone also brings ideas on how we can push forward in our own practice or product or company through design. Okay, and this is just a way to talk about it. Actually, there's more material around it, but this was already kind of like way too big to actually go into this. But some of the things that you see being working is us developing each one of these vectors to become stronger in our UX and as a practice, and to have more impact in the product. So one of the core UX foundations that a lot of people actually start from is like, okay, so you need UX in the product. So first thing, okay, there's a design system. I actually got this question many times already. So how did you sell your design system? Well, I'm going to reveal it now. You don't. Okay, it's really hard to sell a design system, because then you say, okay, so the whole product is going to be consistent, and it helps in the first experience, in the learnability. It's great for productivity, and it also brings a touch of delight, and the experience will be so much better. But that doesn't really fly, okay, because we're not really speaking the language of the people that need to buy into that. And actually implementing a new design system across a product, it's so expensive. So in my experience, you don't do it this way. So how do you do it? And an animation was supposed to be here. So short story, we started getting a bit of buzz from the company saying that the product looked old-fashioned. And this was fairly new, because we actually did a refresh not so much time ago on the product. So it didn't really look that bad. Okay, nothing that we could be really proud of and actually put in dribble, but still, it was good enough. We've heard so much times people saying to us through these years that the experience is good enough. But this gave us a chance. So there was started to have this buzz, and we started talking to like salespeople around the world, figuring out where was this coming from. And we actually figured the pattern, which was like in Asia Pacific, we're like ahead of the curve, like really innovative, amazing. As you looked into Europe, we were actually good enough. But when you talked with UK or US, they were saying that our product was looking old-fashioned. So this is an amazing opportunity to have sales saying that your product looks old-fashioned. Like, just this is just too good for us to not ride this wave. So what did we do exactly to ride this wave and actually sell on this? So the first thing is we put together a set of tests to test our product UI against other products, competitors, other development tools with actual users of the target markets that we wanted to prioritize. So we put those into remote testing tools, and we actually also figured out, we also captured not only like how interesting they found the UI, but also why. Okay, and our UI was just there in between, not identified as OutSystems, and we just wanted to figure out who chose what and why. So this created amazing insight on eventually how we could evolve our UI, along with our own idea of what's tool for an amazing UI. So as we start elaborating on this version and doing these iterations of tests, we actually were able to put together an amazing business case. So one, we talked the language of the business, which is like numbers. So suddenly we had like actually metrics saying, telling a story about our product UI. So if you're going to see the pitch deck that we use for the business stakeholders to actually sell on this design system that we never called it that, it was all about the numbers. It was all metrics. And it was all about how did we compare our product or the new study of what the product could be, for example, against our most direct competitors. And what we saw was that the data confirmed that we're behind our most direct competitors, and that we knew with a new version how to get ahead and actually get positioned along with the highest rated development tools in the world. And this is how we sold our design system. So this is what it looks like. And Guerra, I'm sorry to steal your thunder. I'm hoping you'll step up and tell the story. You, Margarida, Natalia. So this is our product design system today. So we went from this. Paulo, thank you for the background music. That's amazing. So we went from this product, and this is the one that we'll be launching shortly this year. Amazing, right? Looking a lot better. The developers love the dark mode. Okay. And this is just one of the foundations for scale. And I'll stop for questions just in a bit, okay? So what did we put together through this year? So one of them is the inevitable product design system. We just didn't sell it like eventually we might think. The other one was the UX writing system. So we actually have very talented people in the team that are already very tuned to this kind of thing. We already had a lot of examples where the writing in the product, the copy, was throwing off our users. Actually, when you look at it through the copy and just going through the journeys, we actually caught situations where we'd actually catch an error and then almost make fun of it because things were just not connecting and that no one was looking at the flow of that copy. So that's we had a question on when did UX writing emerge as a discipline? It was found here. It evolved at the same time as our design system, which in this case is more around design, interaction, and UX patterns. But we have a whole team which is just focused on this. So we started developing more of our product personas. So making sure that we have a place to centralize all the information we have around users. We worked with a lot of the old timers like Tiago and Ricardo on what were the experience values for our product. So at some point we ended up saying to new designers, that's not really OutSystems. And that was a really unfair comment because we never said what OutSystems was. So we made all this work to actually identify what made OutSystems OutSystems. How do they carry the spirit of what the product should be from designer to designer, from release to the release? How did we scale that? And then there's a set of other UX operating models that we use to actually foster autonomy in any UXer to build the product that we need to build. Okay. So this was actually sent by Paulo just a few minutes before the presentation when I said that I couldn't add more slides and actually go in more detail into content and UX research. Point taken, Paulo. Okay, we're not going into the UX writing system. We're not going to all the product personas and talent profiles and every amazing work that we've done around creating, making it easier to get to our users. By the way, that's on you on the next talk. Okay, so battle cards. What to do? One, leverage the momentums in the company. Okay, so sometimes you can push as hard as you want. You won't get anywhere. It's just not the right time. People are not there. But what you'll find if you just stay tuned is that sometimes in your organization, some things start to happen, which is exactly the wave that you've been waiting for. And that's the time to go all in. The second one is that we can get a lot more influence and impact in the product if you're actually part of the team. So if we stop being a centralized services team and actually go in deep with the teams and become part of that team, okay? And again, this won't work if we lose ourselves in the process. So if we just spread designers apart and they become like these lone wolves doing like their UX thing, we won't get into a more consistent, cohesive, compelling product that really lives up to our nature, where we systematically, no matter the point where we're developing the product, we end up creating the same level of quality, okay? The same attention to those user needs, okay? So it's really important that we balance out this inclusion into the teams, which is fundamental, but we need to balance it out with really a strong practice. And I don't really like the term guild as is suggested in the Spotify model, because it kind of ends up, it's like people go out for coffee because they kind of believe in the same things. So it needs to be so much more than that if you want to build like a world-class product. Okay. And this was the end of this year, where basically we became like part of the team with everything good and bad in it. Okay, questions? This is already a bit long. Are we really going like at an hour now?
I think it's okay, but I'm not sure if you replied to Katarina's question, how do the product designs and UX teams work together at OutSystems? Can you give concrete examples?
Okay. So that's something that we continue to tune. Even today, we were talking exactly about this. So what there's actually a slide afterwards around a bit more around this, but basically we looked at the designers in the teams. They're more of the generalist, okay, the product designer, so they own that part of the product experience. And then we have specialist teams which are supposed to collaborate with that product designer at specific moments, but there's no prescription. It's really up to the team to organically move our product further, okay, and figure out exactly when that should apply. And basically, we try to create a dynamic where product designers bring the rest of the practices whenever needed. And sometimes the practices go after the product designer because they're ignoring whatever that we put together about what that system should be. So we have some processes on how to work together. The best process is when everyone's aligned on what we're trying to do and things just happen organically. Okay. Did I answer that? I hope so. Okay, so okay, do we have dedicated teams working on documentation? Yes, we do have dedicated team working on documentation, which is not really the content team, which works on the copy of the product and the communication, specific communication to users. Okay, so let's just move on. Okay, so year 4. So the year 4 brings a set of challenges. So suddenly we're big. Okay, we've been hiring, we have more and more designers, we have a designer per team, or not really, but especially where we're touching the most on the experience. We have this heavy legacy that actually is damaging the perception of the quality of our work, which is becoming a problem. And we'll continue to be really reactive. So that's exactly something that we need to change. And at this point, I'd like to bring forward this statement from Dieter Rams. So probably you know this, that good design is invisible. The problem with amazing design being invisible, it's at that a lot of times we also become invisible. So we talked about the importance of contrasts at the beginning, of stuff that goes well and that doesn't go that well, right? And that becomes an obvious opportunity for UX to tell the story and become visible. When you start being spread through all these teams and you're actually embedded in the team, the work of the team, especially when things go okay, at the end, it's just a team doing its work. The UX work doesn't really appear. It just works and there's no problem. And to the other side, we have like this research capability, which helps product management immensely to also bring better opportunities and more impact to the product. But again, if it's diluted in the product management conversations, we're not really there. So we have a visibility problem. And the problem now is we're large. We're like a few million each year. So we need to justify the investment of UX in the product. And suddenly it's not that easy. Okay. And because you're large, although you have all this money in the bank, that money in the bank won't save you. Okay. Because you're spending a lot of money as well, and it's not that visible. Okay. So what are the battle cards to use here? So one is you need to make sure that your work becomes visible internally, that it gets recognized that this is UX work. Okay. The other one is that we need to invest more on metrics. We need to start measuring more of the experience and tell that story, saying that we had this and then we did this and the metrics improved. And that's the reason why that happened is because of the research and design. And you need to compile success stories. You need to have that success log of stuff that's going well and UX made the difference. Okay. So when this starts to be the moment where you can start looking into the past and face that huge legacy in the product. Okay. And this is really the message. There's usually this message around in a lot of contexts, which is quality is everyone's concern. The problem is that whatever is something that's everyone's concern, it also means it's no one's concern. So our message was never really that. Our message was that although there's a lot of things that impact the end experience, we're the ones that own it. Okay. And we need to just look at the product and just figure there's some things that we're not proud and that we need to own it and get it fixed. And this is another opportunity in the company where we start getting a bit more buzz, okay, about this business term that we needed to be frictionless, and friction started appearing everywhere. And this was an opportunity because friction is just another way to talk about experience. So we picked up on this friction thing and we gave it a clear known meaning to everyone. We created efficient methods to capture that friction and communicate it. We actually created a way to measure the friction, and we made it extremely visible and understandable to stakeholders. And at the end, what is friction? I can just shortly. So you have a persona in some way that goes through a journey, and when they're trying to achieve an outcome. So we have a target profile, which is going after an outcome, and they go through a journey. And in that journey, there's friction, okay? And we could say that we could call it by so many other metrics or describe it in so other metrics in terms of UX, but this is the one that worked for the company. So if you picked up on the specific journey, a set of personas, and you went through our product, we started communicating that there's this point of friction here, and then there's this point of friction there, and another point of friction. And we developed this system to actually measure the friction and actually say exactly what were the impacts of that friction, and eventually we were able to actually give it a number. It's not the most sciencey number, okay? There's a lot more stuff which is a lot more serious that we can provide, but when you're trying to catch up on the legacy, it becomes really powerful. And when you match it with something that we call the journey walkthrough, which is just a showcase of what the journey looks like, it actually proved to be a lot better than a video or any kind of output or a written document or whatever that we could give a stakeholder. If we give him just like a few steps of the process, and you can actually showcase, this is a friction point because of this. This is a friction point because of this. It's really powerful. Okay, it really conveys the message. So, and although Jared also always says there's no grand unified metric for UX, we actually found ours talking the language of the business and making sure that it has the significance to actually help us improve on the experience of the product. And this is the way that we start improving on our legacy. So one, don't tell about how the experience is, don't tell how bad the experience is, always show it. And this is a lesson from Jared as well. So the journey walkthroughs did an amazing job really showcasing to any stakeholder why things are broken. Again, leveraging momentum in a company and adapting to your organization. No one really cares about the UX lingo. They just care about whatever they care about. And that's exactly how we should be working. Okay, and this leads us to the next stage on becoming more strategic, which is to getting to a spot where we can actually influence the best opportunities for value. So suddenly, for example, we could say, okay, you want to add this feature to the product, but we have all these broken journeys with so much friction already in this place. Why don't we start by fixing the friction? Okay, and suddenly you're affecting the opportunities and the initiatives that you're tackling in the product. Okay, oh, I missed this one. Okay, so wrap up of year 4. I'll just go through to year 5. And at this point, we're at a good enough level, but we're not inspiring the organization for a better product. We're not bringing real innovation. So we really need to push forward. We need to start telling amazing stories that the organization can lead. And this is the time, with all the credit in the bank, or really taking ownership of the whole product, that we start to have the credit of saying this is what the product should be in the future. So this is the place where you start creating amazing UX visions. And Jared has amazing content on that. I keep talking about Jared because Jared has been part of the development of the practice for the last months. And there's a lot of amazing lessons that we've been using. So we actually, yeah, there you go. So we actually created a brand UX vision that goes along with a 3-year product vision with product management to actually inspire and guide the organization. And one amazing thing about vision is that whenever you dream of something and start putting it in front of people, it has a way to become true. Okay, and suddenly when there's a vision, there's a whole likelihood that you're going to actually make it true. Skip this one. As we're looking forward, this is one important lesson. So the ivory tower innovation and the innovation labs don't really work. I think that's been proven. So what does work is when you get really effective people that understand the problems and that can dream of new solutions. And these are researchers, which are thinkers and makers. And if you give them the time with that amazing context and that ability to invent, you can create amazing stuff. And this is some of the things that we've done to actually push the product. That's been done by just pushing someone or pulling someone away from the day-to-day work and just give them a few months to actually focus on a specific problem in the product. And suddenly the help of the group as well, but suddenly we have a new pitch for the product saying that, okay, this is how we should be doing stuff in the product. And a lot of those cases that we've done actually came to become true. And this is one of the ways that we've been influencing the roadmap. So on this perspective of looking forward, what are the battle cards? One of them is a generative research. Stay ahead of what we need to know. So in strong alignment with company and product, identify the really important questions for us to answer. Another one is to develop the ability to create these compelling visions. And sometimes it doesn't take much. It's just some sort of animation in a slide that you put in some video and sub-labels can go a long way, as we've seen. And then it's this this tactic, which is to innovate at the edges, which basically means to separate someone from the day-to-day job and focus that person on specific area or persons on a specific problem. And usually there's an amazing solution that comes out of there that can inspire the organization to follow suit. Okay, and this reaches us to the last level of our journey. So when we're basically leading the way with product management and starting to say exactly what the product should be, what will create more impact in the field, what will really make the difference in the teams, in our customers and the users specifically, how you actually democratize application development for people. Okay. And this is kind of the place where we are. We have a stellar surprise. We still have challenges. We need to retain the leadership of the load code market that we created a few years back. We have an ambitious product vision to implement, and we need to continue. We need to continue to raise to the challenge. Okay, but at this point, the world is our oyster. Okay, we have all these abilities to create visions, to recover our product, to scale our ability to develop amazing experiences, one that share the idea of what OutSystems is. And this is wrapping up how we became the third force in the OutSystems product. Okay, it's also due to these amazing people, but surprise, we need more amazing people. So we're actually hiring technical product designers. So product designers which have a technical understanding or background, growth product designers, but also researchers and writers, visual interaction and motion designers, UX researchers and behavioral designers, and also UX writers and evangelists. So if this looks interesting, just go out to OutSystems careers and we look forward to also talk to you. And this is it. Thank you so much for the patience. I know it was a long ride. I hope it was useful and enjoyable.
Thank you, Gonçalo. I think it was a wonderful talk. I would suggest if anybody wants to make a question to Gonçalo, to actually like raise your hand so I can unmute you, and you can do it speaking instead of writing in the chat. If you are shy, you can also do it in the chat.
Thank you for the feedback, guys.
Gonçalo, can I make a question since nobody is raising
Sure.
hand yet? How it has been since OutSystems is working in a remote environment now? How do you manage this scaling of a team in a remote environment? How is it been done, and what's the pains and the good stuff coming out of it?
Mm-hmm. So I think the transition, like work-wise, wasn't as difficult for us. So we already have a lot of tools, like we were using Miro already, we were using Figma already. So like tools where we were there already. Actually, the rest of the product organization caught up with us in that sense. So we have a lot of stuff documented, our operating model. So there's a lot of stuff that's just already available there. So we're less dependent on just reaching out to Guerra or Paulo or someone else. So there's more autonomy. So we did adapt, and there's something to lose regarding like getting people together. So we talked about the 10% of that time. It's so important, right? So, and we do lose something when we become remote, but we continue to do exactly those things. We meet weekly. Everyone shares this work through Zoom. There's a design reviews through Zoom. And there was actually and another part which is so important, which is like just making sure that people are well. It actually didn't come from me. It came from other people in the group that set up like coffee moments where people just open up a Zoom for coffee and just chat and share stuff. I think well, the team doesn't let me lie, but it wasn't that difficult to actually adapt. We were kind of by chance, we were kind of prepared for this transition. Am I lying, guys? Am I seeing it wrong? Am I seeing it in the eyes of the manager where everything's rosy and everyone's very well? No.
like that user testing moment when you have your boss in the background saying what you feel about the product. No, I believe from what I know that it's been a smooth sail, let's say it. But I wanted to know from you, like in the background, how do you feel this is being managed? But
so I think the company has also been very helpful. So they've been very open. There's always the statement of what works for you works for OutSystems. That just came by as things got worse. So I think that also helps. At the end, if people are not well, nothing else works. So I think that's also very important. That's been helpful for UX and anything else. And I think it's really cool that we're there for each other and that we have this amazing, helpful culture that really makes it easy for everyone, I think. I don't think I'm lying.
I must agree on that.
Okay, cool.
Guys, don't you have any other questions you would like to do to Gonçalo?
Okay, guys. So if there are no questions, feel free to reach. Paulo, is that you?
Yes.
Oh God.
It's not a question for me, but it's a question that I think should be answered.
Okay.
How is the recruiting process at OutSystems? How does it work? If
It's
someone
like
wants to apply, what
it's
do
like
they
a
have to
night.
go
It's
through?
like a nightmare. We
Okay.
we only accept like astronauts and stuff. No, it's we try to make it as a painless process as possible. So you would do apply in the website. We try to be really prompt about the whole process, and you get to speak to a set of people. So it's important that everyone sees themselves working with you somewhere down the line. There's always an exercise. It's always refreshing to see what people can come up with an exercise. And basically, there's through those talks, we're looking into your abilities, your culture fit, that you're not a serial killer, which is a requirement from people ops, so nothing too dramatic. So, are you thinking of applying, Paul?
Well, I don't know. Your pitch was kind of, I don't know, maybe.
I think you should. Well, we have another question here from Katrina, asking like, reusability is a major benefit of low-code platforms. How diversified is the work at OutSystems?
Okay, so there's, I think, two perspectives for that question. So there's a whole thing about working with a low-code platform and the part of building that low-code platform, which are slightly different challenges. So at the product group, we're very much about building that low-code platform and reinventing the way that applications are built. And I don't think there's boring moments there. There's always challenges because we're actually inventing stuff that was never, basically we're solving problems that were never solved before. So if you're looking for a challenge, that's exactly what you'll get there. On the other side, which is about leveraging our own product, there's this thing to it, which is the fact that you're spending less time and focus on the code itself gives you the ability to focus where the real impact is, which is in the problem you're solving, on the users that you're affecting, in the business that you're affecting. So, and when you look at all the range of problems that you solve with the platform, it's not about that we've removed a lot of complexity from the use of the product that makes it boring. It's about that it frees you up to really make an impact on whatever problem you're trying to solve in whatever industry for whatever case. So I'm speaking from experience, so I spend a lot of time also in services. It's remarkable that you go to some customer and get into their world and actually with low code are able to just in a few weeks or months time really make an impact on those people's lives, and really see it, like, because it's like a short cycle. It's remarkable. It doesn't get boring at all. But these are different problems. There's this dichotomy to it. Okay, another question.
Yeah, question here from Akemi. How does it work between your other country offices? Do you have moments of integration with this as well?
Yeah, so we've been spread apart the world, spread apart the globe for a long time now. I think even as we started also with some Dutch capital. So we started off immediately like Portugal and the Netherlands. We quickly went to the UK and the US. And so this has been our life for a long time. Specific in product, so we were opening up also a product in the US and Asia Pacific, probably also. I don't think I can talk about this. So we're spreading. So it's becoming more of a global market. So it doesn't really matter exactly where you are. Then it becomes more of a time zone issue than anything else to work with the team. So do we have moments of integration with these as well? I think it really depends on what you're doing, but we're real fans of putting pods together, for example, which is just creating teams with people that come from different areas of the company to solve specific problems. So whenever those occur, it just happens naturally, start collaborating with other people. We do have a set of initiatives to try to put more people to work talking together from different parts of the company. Well, I hope it answered it. Okay, maybe that's it, Shona. Now for real.
Guys, thank you a
You're
lot
welcome.
for coming, and Gonçalo, thank you a lot for your brilliant talk. Guys, I want to let you know that on the 4th of February, we will have Beatriz Belmont speaking about design and policy making. Who cares? So feel free to join us. Contact Gonçalo Veiga if you want to keep knowing more things about what he just spoke. João Guerra also made in the chat an invitation for whoever wants to talk about design systems to proceed in reaching him, and also Marina Calado about UX writing. So feel free to connect, guys. This is also a space for us to meet and to connect. So
Always feeling left out. So contact Paul Vittorini if you want to talk UX research as well.
Yes. He's a boss in it. So feel free, guys, and thank you a lot for joining us.